Okay, we're going to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff to have a really cool review for you guys from the brand Nivada Grenchen. A little about them: they're originally founded back in 1926, then later revived as recently as 2018. Their core idea is always to respect as much as possible the original designs and stick to authentic specifications while offering affordable prices. And they really just want to provide those Nivada and as well as just general vintage watch aficionados, providing them really what they've been asking for, right? So they're not really trying to revolutionize anything. It's just filling a hole within the market, especially from a brand that has such a lovely catalog of just very iconic pieces. Now, in terms of the type of watch, I'd consider this an everyday adventure watch. Some key characteristics is that when you're looking for something that really fits within the genre, of course, you're going to want that sporty, legible, and tough combination. This is from their Super Antarctic line, and this is the 369 dial. And essentially, the Super Antarctic is a reissue that was actually started back on Instagram. Following a post of one of their followers who had, the great idea to share his vintage timepiece with the brand. They started it kind of in their stories, and it got so many messages about it that essentially it became their mission to make it again with the same original spirit and guts. So, this modern version now includes sapphire glass, Swiss-made automatic movement, the Soprod P024, and now a screw-down crown, which will help it offer 20 atmospheres of water resistance. So very cool from that perspective. These go for $958 directly from the brand, and a big shout out to Nivada for sending this piece in for me to share with you guys. You guys know I've reviewed actually this line, a couple of different variations of it as of late. This is the first time I've actually reviewed it on the strap, and I have to say, the two-piece strap really brings this case to life in terms of the beautiful and very, very signature lugs. So with that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, now a big fan, of course, of this watch in the past. And now with this 369 layout, it definitely really kind of doubles down on that Explorer-like aesthetic. And let's not forget that in terms of, the Rolex Explorer, the 369 is, it's a watch that was made to be a tribute to like the Rolex Oyster that actually went with Sir Edmund Hillary to the top of Mount Everest. Now, these Nivada Super Antarctics actually do date back to actual Arctic exploration, also done. So, I mean, these are definitely true adventure watches. And yeah, because of the state of the market and other horologically significant pieces, a triangle and a 369 definitely give you that aesthetic that you look at this and you think, oh, that's like an adventure watch. And one of the things I really like is on the strap, right? It just has such a different personality. Now, if I were to buy a Rolex Explorer, as much as I would want to wear it on a strap because it looks amazing on a strap, I would probably be forced to wear it on the bracelet because the bracelet's so good. That Oyster bracelet is iconic, right? So one of the beauties about something like this is you can kind of just happily wear it on the strap. And I do have, I own two other Nivada Super Antarctics, and both of them are on bracelet. And I have to say, there's definitely a different charm that you get, especially with, you can see these really cool little bevels on top of the lugs almost make it have kind of an interned, almost somewhat Omega-like style to it. It's just cool. It just adds to that, and it kind of draws your eye versus previously, these kind of facets will kind of melt away when you have a metal end link there and, beads of rice bracelet. So it's one of those things I have to say, like, it's cool that although, yeah, they did change, this versus my other Super Antarctics, it does have the 369 dial, but it's really being on the strap that really brings it to life and makes it feel like a really fresh and new watch, which I dig. You're getting 38 millimeter diameter, 11.5 millimeter thickness, and a 45 millimeter lug to lug. So very, very wearable. It's stainless steel case, brushed and polished. You're getting a double domed sapphire, as you guys can see here, which does have inner AR coating. So one of the nice things is you are going to get, of course, at the outer edges, you're going to get a little bit of visual and just a little bit of a play there. But the nice thing is, it's very, very legible, and it's one of those things that's funny enough, the Swiss made can get distorted very easily or even omitted from the dial based on the angle that you're going to be looking at it. So that's a little bit of fun there. And you guys can see it just gives you those vibes. And this is one with the clean loom execution. You can actually get this with a patinaed loom, also with a patinaed kind of tropical dial, which I think looks fantastic. But for me, you know, there's something about that idea of that new old stock vibe, and I think you're really getting that here, where it's like, oh, this feels like a new old stock classic Nivada Antarctic, which I think is very, very cool. Now the crown is screw down, which is great, nicely knurled and even nicely signed. This was actually an upgrade because the original ones, when they first reissued, had a bit of a smaller crown. Now you have a kind of an onion style, and although the size wise isn't much bigger, I will say the grip is much easier, so that tactile engagement is definitely very dialed in. Now on the case back, nice enough, you guys can see here is you have this cool little golden medallion. You see the Antarctic exploration theme all in there, and yeah, it's great. And what you can't see is the Swiss automatic movement, which is a SOPROD PO24, which is essentially comparable to the ETA 2824. Now that applied emblem, I think, looks really great. And of course, it just adds again to that kind of overall vintage aesthetic and just kind of the whole piece coming together thematically, which I can really appreciate. Now, getting into the dial, it's matte black versus a glossy black. And I think that matte black really ties in beautifully with this strap, right? The leather strap. Look at that. I mean, it's just a beautiful transition, nicely matted there. It's not super glossy. And I think that adds, again, to the vintage aesthetic, as well as, of course, the font style being more on the vintage side. You're also going to have no date complication, which is nice, and also no ghost date position when you are setting using this crown. So very cool that the SOPROD that they have is, has been updated to kind of, get rid of that little nitpick for some folks. And then you have Super Luminova. It glows green. I don't believe it's specified, so we'll definitely get to it when we get into the loom shots, though. But yeah, 20 millimeter lug width, which means this is going to be quite a strap monster. And again, you don't have to feel bad about having it on a strap, because yeah, it doesn't it doesn't have a Rolex Oyster to go on. It has a beads of rice. It has a flat link, and a couple different options. But here again, if you really want to save money and really turn this into some very versatile everyday piece, you can do it, pretty much thought-free, guilt-free, which I think is really cool for somebody who has a lot of watches and tends to kind of overthink a lot of the different combinations. Now, it comes on this beautiful black leather strap with white stitching, and this is an option. There's a couple different options you can get, but this is pretty good, guys. It has a nice 4 millimeter taper from 20 millimeters down to about 16 millimeters, and check out this fully milled and beveled buckle. That is fantastic. Even the finger here is milled, and that beveling looks fantastic. Check out the transition between that fine satin brush and the high polished. This thing is really, really nice. So yeah, I'm very, very impressed. That is a really well executed buckle, and that hardware being so well done is always a nice sign of, yeah, hey, there's a lot of attention to detail that is being paid when it comes to this watch. So with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this looks absolutely perfect. Look how low that sits. Very nice and low slung, wraps the wrist really well. Of course, if I do get my, watch a bit too close to the lens there, you're going to get some perspective distortion. It's going to seem a lot larger. So what I like to do is keep my wrist nice and low, and then just kind of, let's get it to focus. That would be helpful. All right. And then just tighten up the frame here so you guys can get a bit more of a detailed look, but just at a truer aspect ratio. So check that out. And even though I do have a larger, 7.5-inch wrist, it is quite round, as you guys can see. So it's not like it's super wide and flat and accommodating to any old watch. And this one sits really nicely, I have to say. Check that out. And there's a nice bit of room there. So if you did want to put this on a pass-through style strap, you're not going to have to worry about that like getting shredded up against the edges or anything of the case back. So this thing looks really, really good. Check that out. Very organic in terms of its flow. Nothing crazy, right? It's not like super complex angles. It's not Grand Seiko or anything like that. But man, with this very toolish and industrial look, it just flows really, really nicely, I have to say. It just comes together. It's not trying to do too much, but it's also far from boring, which I can appreciate. So with that said, let's actually get it off the wrist, set up for some loom shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Check that out. Yes, very, very nice, I have to say. I'm really digging that. Nice and sharp, really well applied, as you guys can see there, and it works. But one thing I always like to incorporate, of course, is going to be a bit of a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. And as you guys can see, that black dial with that matte finish does shift through a couple different phases. Definitely has the very dark black that you guys are going to see in low, when it doesn't have a lot of direct light on it. The nice thing is you're going to have that nice crisp loom, help setting a contrast. But even when you come and can get a little washed out, as you guys can see, it takes on some really cool kind of anthracite gray tones, but it actually ties in beautifully to the way that leather is actually reflecting the light back as well, and it just has a really clean kind of cohesive vibe, and I dig that. I like how uniform everything is as the colors tone, the color tones shift, based on the different angles. So yeah, that's nice, pleasant surprise. Of course, with that old school aesthetic, I think it makes sense to have, the green loom there. So very cool. Very nice. And of course, the green loom is going to be ultimately a bit more high contrast, even as things start kind of dimming over time. Again, this isn't a dive watch or anything like that, but it is definitely nice to see that even when the loom isn't fully engaged, the fact that the dial is going to be rendering quite black, and then of course the indexing is quite white, you're going to still, the writing right there isn't loomed, but you can see that it just really still pops, and you can expect the same from when you're looking for those cardinal points and telling time at times of darkness. So closing thoughts, guys, on the wrist, this thing just wears perfect. Like, I don't wish it to be any smaller. I don't wish it to be any larger. I think it just rocks. So super versatile, hugs the wrist well. It has a very low slung kind of appeal to it that is very different than something like, an oyster case, right, from Rolex. So it does have its own signature personality, which I can absolutely appreciate. Now, in terms of model variants, definitely check the site links down in the description for options and availability. There are a couple of different ones, and they're all really fun, and I think they all look pretty darn great. But in terms of comparable models, so many options in the everyday adventure space, both kind of above and below in price. So it's pretty saturated, but I think where the Super Antarctic excels is in its heritage aesthetic, right? You can, still find original vintage examples of the watches that inspired these from the 1950s for around $1,500. I mean, that was the last time I looked them up. They could be fluctuating, or there could be none available right now. So don't quote me on that, but yeah, when I looked, you could buy these for around $1,500, the original ones. So I think there's a real kind of tangible tie to history there, connecting these new up-spec'd offerings with the brand's history. So yeah, I mean, I just dig that. I think this is just really well balanced, really handsomely designed. I mean, even the balance of the text on the dial, right? 2 lines above, 2 lines below, the really cool handset that, again, it gives you you kind of those vibes, but still is definitely quite different by comparison. You look at the minute hand, you look at the seconds hand, they just have their own little thing going on, and I just dig that. So for me, guys, bottom line, you know, I feel like this is kind of the best overall Swiss affordable yet capable Rolex Explorer alternative with actual heritage. So let me add that, with actual heritage. Now, are there crazy spec'd everyday adventure type watches that are out there, that ranging in levels of refinement and value proposition and all that? Yeah, up and down. But for me, the fact that this has an actual heritage around Arctic exploration, and they just have that eye, and they were kind of that era, I know they just get brownie points for that, especially for somebody that appreciates older watches. And I think, you know, it's much like with cars, right? Like, yeah, I can love modern vehicles as much as the next guy, but I still, you know, find a way to appreciate vintage models and kind of what they stand for. So there's always going to be that kind of idea that, oh man, I'd love to, you know, drive an old air-cooled Porsche. As much as I want like a GT3 or a turbo, you know, a vintage air-cooled model would just be so much more romantic, right? And I think you get that. So here you're getting an elevated kind of refinement, while still affordable enough to take out and fully enjoy on your next adventure. Like, that's the cool thing, is even at, you know, $958, you take this out and you can treat it like an adventure watch. You can take it with you and not worry as much. You know, it's not an heirloom or anything like that. But the cool thing is, you know, it could be. You never know. The brand keeps being as successful as they have been. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, these first couple of reissues started holding more water in terms of the aftermarket. But let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please hit like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.